Thank you, Steve. The four filters, let me give you just a little bit of background. I became interested in their decision-making process, and I came across a phrase that Mr. Buffett uses in a couple different ways. He says we look for a business that we can understand, so that's number one, and he means economic understanding. Number two, a business that has a sustainable competitive advantage, and sometimes he uses the words durable competitive advantage. And he wants them with able and trustworthy managers, so that's filter number three. And finally is Ben Graham's margin of safety, which is purchasing at a bargain price. And yes, understanding what you own was also influenced by his partner, Mr. Charlie Munger, who's now about 92 or 93 years old. But Charlie Munger has always said, let's look at a business like a lattice work of mental models, and let's collect mental facts about each business, and then let's take a look at it and see if it's a first-class business and whether it can endure economic storms. A lattice work of mental models is something like building your experience just by looking at numerous businesses, and your audience will appreciate the fact that as we go through our lives over time, we start to get a sense of which businesses are good and can endure, and as we get a little bit older, we can see businesses that have gone under and failed. So little by little, we build up our lattice work of mental models every day. Well, the answer to that question is, in my view, is that they have evolved over time. You may be familiar with some of their early purchases way back when they bought a department store. And in fact, Berkshire Hathaway was a textile business that was slowly losing business to southern manufacturers and overseas textile manufacturers. But at the time they purchased it, it was still producing free cash. And so at that moment in time, it was kind of a cash cow. But over time, competition diminished that business. Luckily, they transferred some of their funds into insurance companies and other fine businesses. The second filter is sustainable competitive advantage, and sometimes he'll label it durable competitive advantage. Basically, that means he wants a business that has an economic moat or some type of protection around that company so that it's difficult for other businesses to get into that line of business. Yes, that's something that you kind of build with experience, and you look for brands or brand identity because that means customer loyalty. And also having a sustainable competitive advantage means that you have repeat customers, and they develop a loyalty like Coca-Cola and Gillette and some of the other brands. I think most recently they acquired the Duracell unit from Procter & Gamble. Mm-hmm. The amazing thing about Coca-Cola is that if you look at the numbers of Coca-Cola versus Pepsi, Coca-Cola, which has been around over 110 years, has built a worldwide distribution system and a cost advantage. So if you look at the ratio of free cash produced per unit, it actually beats Pepsi and many of the competitors just because of its scale, its size, and its distribution. And then of course it also has that loyalty brand that some people just prefer Coke over Pepsi. That's a good point, Steve. I think you may be onto something there. Amazon, I prefer shopping on Amazon online, but I did look at their estimated intrinsic value. If you model that traditionally, right now it looks slightly expensive, but then you could be right. If you put a longer tail on your valuation, then you could argue that it's fairly valued. Okay, the third filter is able and trustworthy management. And he always has this joke when you listen to Warren. He says, if they're able but not trustworthy, you may end up losing money. Just like those guys that used to run Enron, they were certainly able of doing business and operating the energy part of their company. However, as facts have proven, they weren't very trustworthy. Yes, you're exactly correct. He looks for the passion that they have. He looks for the passion that they have for their individual businesses. And they do have a drive to build their businesses rationally and not overspend and control the costs. You're right again there. The estimation of the intrinsic value per share can be done several ways. The one that I use and the one that Warren has talked about in his writings is the estimation of free cash flow that the company will produce over its lifetime. Now, I don't stretch it out that long, but I use a 15-year model where I try to use a conservative growth rate on the first 10 years, and then I just flatten it out from year 11 to year 15, and then take the sum and discount the sum using the formula called net present value, bring that back to present value, and then divide by the number of shares. Right, at least to get you in the ballpark area. Warren always says that he and Charlie could sit down and do these numbers and they wouldn't come up with the same figure, but as long as you come close, then you know whether you're buying at a bargain or you're overpaying. Thank you very much, Steve.